Welcome back to the V.T.P. Let's not waste a moment longer and move on to Generation 4 in our examination of the gimmicks of each generation.
Generation 4 saw yet another change in hardware, this time being the transition from the Game Boy Advance to the Nintendo DS, and with it came a slew of new technological innovations, namely the use of the touchscreen in order to create new ways for players to interact with their games. In the case of Pokémon, this did not fundamentally impact the main gameplay of the franchise, however, instead sticking to the guns that got the games to where they were at all at that point, and merely expanding upon the adventure present in different ways. For these games, players were taken to the Sinnoh region, a land of mystical legends and ancient secrets, where the nefarious Team Galactic is trying to bring a new world into existence one way or another under the direction of their leader Cyrus. The type of threat posed here is unlike any ever seen, with the gods of time, space, and much more all part of this generation, not to mention the fact that it effectively introduced the god of all creation in the franchise, Arceus. This was even further complemented by remakes of the original Generation 2 games, and altogether, it proved to be an exciting new frontier for players to explore, and a beloved set of games even to this day. Ball Capsules and Seals and Stickers. Ball Capsules and Seals and/or Stickers, as they are now called as a brilliant diamond and shining pearl, essentially allowed players to attach small markers on any of their captured devices, and with Pokemon in them, to add a special effect or words to the device so that, when a Pokemon is released from a marked ball capsule, it will display those markers as text or special effects to make the entrance into battle seem more grand and flashy. This cute bit of customization definitely helped to give more personality to the Pokemon that were contained inside, and could be fun to play with for children and adults alike. However, this function never made it out of its debut generation, once again minus the remakes of Generation 4, and while I cannot say for certain why this might be the case, there is the possibility that it might have something to do with the potential abuse of messages that may be less than kosher for all ages, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was actually the truth. Poffins. In much the same way that Pokeblocks are crafted from berries and used to make the contest stats of a Pokemon increase in order to make them more aesthetically pleasing for Pokemon contests, Poffins were the equivalent of them in Generation 4, but were notably different in that there was more of a complex and hands-on process for creating them. This is because these food items and pastries that have to be properly cooked and baked in order to make sure they are formed properly, requiring a much more direct and hands-on active approach to making them. While this is likely done to reflect the rich cooking culture of the Sinnoh region, as well as the fact that they can be both made and bought from certain stores, these objects fell out of favor with the classic Pokemon contest in Generation 4, only returning in their remakes. Underground and the Grand Underground. The Underground was one of the most defining attributes of the Sinnoh region, and served as a wonderful break from normal gameplay to players, as well as a way to acquire rare items that can be of great use on the surface. In essence, the Underground was built in the deepest reaches of the Sinnoh region, below the surface, in order to create a maze-like series of tunnel landscapes that could be mined for both spheres, gems of value that could be used to purchase rare items from secret bases, as well as many rare objects that couldn't be readily found elsewhere in the region, such as fossils and even plates. Using the Explorer Kit, players could mine for these objects and use them to enhance normal gameplay, and thus serve as a fun diversion for those looking to pass the time and maybe acquire rare loot that could be more than worth the time to unearth. In the Generation 4 remakes, this entire area was upgraded into the Grand Underground, and while it stayed mostly the same, it was markedly different for the inclusion of Pokemon Hideaways, a series of small and large chambers where rare Pokemon could be found that might otherwise not have been seen within the Sinnoh region, in turn allowing explorers to not only find rare items, but rare Pokemon as well. While this could be essential for players in these games trying to complete their Pokédex, because both the classic and modern underground areas were specifically locked to the Sinnoh region, they were never recreated in future generations, thus isolating them to the Sinnoh region entirely. Pokétech. The Pokétech is a unique device that took the place of the Pokénav in Generation 4, and worked quite differently in that it acted with apps that could be uploaded to it throughout the course of the game in the Generation 4 games. These apps performed a variety of different functions, from apps as simple as being a counter to telling time, to those that could keep track of berries, the Pokemon you'd recently caught, a lucky coin flip app, and so much more. The modular nature of the device made it more engaging than others, as you can actively upgrade it if you spent the time to look in every nook and cranny and spoke to every NPC that you could. And while some of the apps were not all that useful, it still made the device much more engaging than past devices, and thus made it fairly intriguing for players. Though it would also end up getting abandoned just like its predecessors with the advent of the newest technology in succeeding generations. Pokathlon. The Pokathlon is a new type of competition that was introduced in Heart Gold and Soul Silver as a way of offering a unique replacement to the Pokemon contest that otherwise could be found in the mainline Sinnoh-based games for Generation 4. In essence, the Pokathlon consisted of a total of 10 different games styled like the Olympics in the real world, with different events requiring players to use their Pokemon to adapt to each event and bring in the best Pokemon they could to complete and show that their Pokemon were the best at whatever they could try. As with contest stats, this introduced a new mechanic in the form of performance stats, which was set at a given level unique among the stats of every different Pokemon, and could be upgraded with Apple Juice in order to make the best athletes possible out of them. While it didn't require the same strategy that contests did, that was sort of the point. Instead of moves and contest stats being alone what dictated how a contest went, these competitions were based on stats and the player actions with their Pokemon, and thus required much greater engagement with the events as a whole than Pokemon contests. While this event certainly proved to be a great time sink and incredibly fun to take part in, it was isolated to the Johto region and connected directly with the apricorns found only in the region in abundance, and thus did not make any future appearances within the mainline series after Generation 4. Pokewalker. The Pokewalker was a unique pedometer device introduced with Heart Gold and Soul Silver that allows players to put one of their Pokemon inside of it and take them out for a walk. Aside from acting as a way to increase the level of a Pokemon, with recorded steps counting as experience points to them as they traveled, the different locations available to players for their Pokemon to walk into inside the devices could allow them to encounter and obtain not just rare items, but potentially even rare Pokemon with unique moves that might otherwise be incredibly hard to find. The device itself was a cute addition to the games, and certainly added a level of fun and interactivity that had not been present before, but the technology eventually ran its course and wasn't reproduced in further generations, likely in response to Game Freak switching gears as to what they wished to focus on in terms of overall gameplay. Following Pokemon. While perhaps not a groundbreaking feature to some, Amity Square and Hearthome City presented players with the potential to actually have the Pokemon follow them on the field map outside their device in order to interact with them. While charming and cute in appearance, this also allowed them to randomly pick up objects that could be used for a variety of purposes, from props and things alike for contests, to even berries that might otherwise be very hard to get a hold of. This was not brought back for some time, but over the course of following generations, the concept has appeared time and time again, and with the focus on both bonding with Pokemon and gathering rare items, it seems to finally be at a point where it will stay in future generations. It's also likely that this was done because it helps to make a playthrough in any game feel more intimate, as your favorite Pokemon get to actually join you in the adventure, and in turn, make it that much easier to connect with them and truly make any adventure your own. Flat Battles. This battle type first entered the scene in Generation 4 as a simple way to help even the playing field in matches of any sort. In essence, flat battle rules simply dictate that all Pokemon used in battle have the level altered to be level 50, thus putting all present Pokemon on a similar playing field. While nothing special on its own, this does make it easier for any Pokemon to compete with others without levels necessarily being a huge problem. It is not surprising that it has since become the standard for all types of battle facilities and official tournaments, helping players to focus entirely on strategy to overcome opponents, rather than just a greater experience level alone. Physical Special Split. Prior to Generation 4, all attacks in the series were clearly split between physical and special attacking types, so no matter what Pokemon was using a move, you knew based on type alone what sort of damage they could actually deal with their attacks. While this did seem to work for many types of Pokemon, a lot of otherwise great Pokemon, like the members of the Ghastly family, were left out to dry, as their best attacks were all physical in nature because the Ghost type was a physical attacking type. This meant that some Pokemon were a bit overpowered, and others were made much less useful than they had the actual potential to be. In Generation 4, however, this is rectified with the split of physical and special attacks. Because of this change, all attacking types had the movesets divided into both physical and special attacks. So, as an example, Gengar's Shadow Ball would take its power based on their monstrous special attack stat, and not their much more meager attack stat. This also paved the way for moves like Giga Impact that could take advantage of this split, and gave Pokemon like Electivire a chance to show their brute strength with moves like Thunder Punch. As a whole, this change helped to diversify and make the metagame far more detailed and balanced than before, and added a new level of strategy that helped to make the many new evolutions introduced in this generation, among others, far more of a threat than they otherwise could have ever been. Global Trade Station. While the advent of the wireless adapter in Generation 3 allowed for trading to occur without worrying about cords getting in the way, the system still had its limitations when it came to distance, and this proved to be a huge problem as it still limited the scope of who could actually trade with who in an area. In Generation 4, however, Nintendo Wi-Fi officially became a feature of the series, and with it came the global trade system. With this system, traders could put up Pokemon for trade that they were looking to exchange for something else, and in turn could trade with players from across the world. Though the technology was still in its infancy at the time, and not a lot of people had direct access to Wi-Fi spots, Nintendo used the game as a chance to set this early system up to the best of its ability, and in turn allowed for traders across the world to finally interact with each other and trade. This skeleton system was eventually replaced as Wi-Fi became more prevalent in the coming years, but the GTS itself has remained a staple of the franchise ever since, and will likely continue to be as such for as long as technology dictates it to be a viable way to trade with others across the globe.
We're only halfway through this episode, and we'll be taking quite the leap in development in the next generation, so stay tuned for the next installment of the V.T.P. Thank you for watching this video. It brings me great joy to be able to speak to you all in the world each and every time we meet like this, to explore the many different facets of both the world of Pokemon as we know it, and the world as we live it, through every adventure we have with Pokemon by our side. If you'd like to, please subscribe, ring the bell and all that jazz to keep yourself updated on content uploads and other materials of the like. You can also follow me on Twitter if you'd like to know right away when something new is uploaded, and my written works, from which most of this is based on, can be found on DeviantArt. Links to both can be found in the description down below. Remember that the world of Pokemon is a place full of wonder and mystery, and you never know what to expect. So, stay vigilant, keep watch, and always be prepared for the unexpected. Until next time, trainers and friends of all sorts, have a wonderful time.